Thousands of years ago, humanity pulled off one of the strangest achievements in all of history. We took wolves and transformed them into dogs. Wild cattle became cows. Wild boars became pigs. Wild horses became our companions, our laborers, our transportation. Entire species were reshaped to fit the demands of human civilization. But here's something most people never stop to consider. Nearly all of that happened thousands of years ago, which raises a strange question. Have we already domesticated everything worth domesticating, or is there an animal living today that could become the next dog? And surprisingly, there's actually a frontrunner. If scientists had to place a bet on which animal humans could successfully domesticate next, the answer would almost certainly be foxes. But to understand why, we first need to understand something crucial. Most animals are absolutely terrible candidates for domestication. People frequently confuse taming with domestication. These are not the same thing. A tiger raised by humans can become tame. It might tolerate people. It might even appear affectionate. But that doesn't make tigers domesticated. Domestication occurs when an entire species changes genetically across many generations, and that's an incredibly difficult thing to achieve. Take zebras. For centuries, people have attempted to domesticate them. On paper, zebras seem like perfect candidates. They're similar in size to horses. They're strong enough to carry a rider. They live in herds. Yet domesticated zebras essentially don't exist. Why? Because zebras are aggressive, wildly unpredictable, and extremely resistant to selective breeding. The traits that made horses so useful simply aren't there in zebras. And that illustrates the core problem. Most species failed the domestication test entirely. Some are too aggressive. Some panic far too easily. Some refuse to breed in captivity. Others simply lack the social structures that allow humans to work alongside them. Historian and biologist Jared Diamond argued that only a tiny fraction of large animal species possess the right combination of traits for domestication at all. In other words, humanity likely picked off most of the obvious winners a very long time ago, but perhaps not all of them, which brings us back to foxes. In 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitri Belyaev launched one of the most fascinating scientific experiments ever conducted. His objective was straightforward: take wild silver foxes and breed only the friendliest individuals. Nothing else was considered. Not size, not appearance, not intelligence, just friendliness toward humans. Generation after generation, only the tamest foxes were selected to reproduce. And what happened next genuinely shocked the scientific community. The foxes didn't simply become friendlier, they began looking different. Their ears went floppy, their tails curled upward, their coats developed entirely new colors and patterns. Some even started behaving like dogs. They actively sought out human attention. They wagged their tails, they followed people around. And all of this unfolded within just a few decades. An absolute eye blink in evolutionary terms. The experiment revealed something extraordinary. Once a species begins adapting to human companionship, a cascade of other changes tends to follow. Behavior shifts, appearance shifts, even biology shifts. Which is precisely what happened to wolves thousands of years ago. That's why foxes are likely the strongest candidate for future domestication. The process has already been demonstrated to work. But here's the catch. Just because we can domesticate foxes doesn't mean we actually will. Because today we face a problem our ancestors never had to deal with. We don't really need new domesticated animals. Throughout most of history, domestication solved very practical problems. Animals gave us food, transportation, protection, and labor. Modern technology now handles many of those roles far more efficiently than animals ever could. So if foxes were fully domesticated tomorrow, what role would they actually fill? That's a much harder question to answer, and that points toward a much bigger idea. Maybe the next domesticated animal won't be chosen because it's useful. Maybe it'll happen because a species naturally becomes compatible with human life. We've actually seen this play out before. With cats. Contrary to what most people assume, humans didn't create cats the way we created dogs. Cats largely domesticated themselves. When early farming societies began storing grain, mice appeared. The mice drew in wild cats. The cats got a reliable food source. Humans got free pest control. The friendliest cats benefited the most from this arrangement. Over generations, both species quietly adapted to one another. Nobody sat down and decided to invent the house cat. The relationship simply emerged on its own. And maybe that's exactly how the next domestication will unfold. Because evolution never actually stopped. Animals are still adapting to us right now. Urban foxes have figured out how to thrive inside cities. Crows can identify individual human faces. Certain birds have learned to use traffic patterns to crack open nuts. Entire species are adjusting to human environments in ways our ancestors never could have imagined. And that opens up a fascinating possibility. Maybe somewhere on Earth, another species is already taking its first steps down the same path that wolves and cats once traveled. Not because humans planned it, but simply because living alongside us turns out to be advantageous. If that species exists today, foxes remain the most likely candidate. They're intelligent, social, adaptable, and we've already seen how rapidly they respond to selective breeding. But the real answer may be even more interesting than foxes, because the history of domestication points to something unexpected. It was never really about humans controlling animals. It was always about cooperation. The animals that succeeded weren't necessarily the strongest or the smartest. They were the ones capable of forming a genuine relationship with us. Wolves became dogs because the partnership benefited both sides. Cats stayed because life around humans was simply easier than life without us. And maybe the next domesticated species will arrive the same way. Not through some grand scientific initiative, not because we set out to create it, but because one species gradually discovers that its future is better with us than without us. So when people ask what animal will be domesticated next, the most probable answer is still foxes. But the more compelling possibility is that the real next domesticated animal may already be out there, quietly adapting to human life, and we simply haven't noticed yet.